Hello and welcome to Woodshed Reviews, where we review everything good and bad, old and new. And today we are going to look at the cult classics Tron and Tron Legacy. This was your choice.
Kind of thought you were a little more familiar with it when I suggested it than it turns out you were, so maybe you want to kind of start there.
Yeah, well, I was quite excited to watch it because I thought I'd seen Tron before, and I love sci-fi stuff generally. So yeah, I stuck Tron on and I had no recollection whatsoever of this film. I'd seen clips obviously over the years,
Yeah.
and I know the kind of general story.
Uh-huh.
So it was quite a fresh experience for me, so I enjoyed it from that perspective.
I suppose I just assumed that you were a little bit more familiar with it than I was, so that'll be kind of interesting because I'm coming at it from a different angle, so it'll be interesting to see where we kind of align there.
So would you say this is one of your top films?
Kind of. I saw it once when I was young on TV one Christmas. I would have been about 10,
Okay.
I think. I think I'd circled it on my TV guide for the bumper holiday
Yeah.
film fest. I was kind of interested in it. Saw it one, I think it was Christmas Eve or something like that. Just kind of blew my tiny mind, I suppose. The visuals,
Yeah.
just still I think look unlike anything else, for good or bad. And the idea of going into a computer / video game, you know, a 10-year-old me was just like, this is this is amazing.
I can imagine that because when I watched it, I said, why did I not see this when I was 10? I would have loved it.
Right, yeah.
So I was really into home computing. I had my personal computer,
Yeah.
Commodore 64, well into programming stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would have been amazing.
Aye, similar. I had my also home computer, Amstrad CPC, so a bit of rivalry there.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Was there a Tron game for those? I can't remember, but I think there was knockoffs of like the light cycles and stuff. So yeah, this was really, it was one of those things that felt like it had been beamed into my TV from the future or something.
Yeah.
And then I never saw it again for years because I think it's not something that was on TV a lot. I don't think it's not something that was it wasn't a big franchise, so there wasn't a lot of, I think there was a small range of toys and
Yeah.
a comic or a book or something like that, but nothing that I could find at the time, because this would have been about maybe 5 or 6 years after it had been released. And yeah, it hadn't been a huge success
Yeah.
for Disney in 1982, or not. It had done okay, but it wasn't like what they had been banking on.
Yeah. It's not, one thing I'd say about it's not a very accessible film. You need to be a bit of a geek, I guess, or...
Yeah.
Clue.
Yes, sir.
Clue, we don't have much time left to find that file. This is top priority.
Yes, sir, I know, sir.
This isn't just correcting my bank statement or phone bill problem again. This is a must.
I understand, sir.
Now, I wrote you.
Yes, sir.
I taught you everything I know about the system.
Thank you, sir, but I'm not sure
No
that...
buts, Clue. That's for users. Now, you're the best program that's ever been written. You're dogged and relentless, remember?
Let me at him.
That's the spirit. Now, keep that tank rolling, and I'll try to cover you from this end. Go.
Yeah, I suppose you've got to think about 1982 when it comes out, and you know, I saw it in like I'm saying, probably about 88 or roughly or something like that. So people are becoming a little bit more computer versatile by that point. But yeah, it's definitely, and it throws you in at the deep end as well, which I think is a bit of a mixed thing for the film. I think one of it's got a few big issues. As much as I've got fond memories of it, and it kind of like, you know, fired up the synapses in my brain, and I loved all that, and you know, it's definitely got its issues.
Yeah.
And I think one of them is it possibly needed to do a sort of Wizard of Oz sort of thing, where you've got the first 20, 25 minutes in the real world following these characters, Kevin Flynn, Alan, and the girl, can't remember her name. And then you get that great transportation scene where he gets lasers up, and then you're suddenly like, oh, what is this? Where are we? We're not in Kansas anymore. And it kind of maybe doesn't do that because we go straight, I mean, literally we go kind of straight into it with the opening scene, which I quite like, with the arcade cabinet, and we zoom into the game. They're playing the light cycle game.
Well, that transference scene, the transition from the real world to the computer world, I guess, did they call it the grid in the first film?
No, I think it was the grid was in the second film. They didn't really have a name for it then. This is like even like cyberspace or
right.
things like that. You know, that probably came around about that time. But Tron was just a little bit. It was probably 1982. This is probably Blade Runner,
Yeah.
and the novel Neuromancer, which kind of kick-started all this kind of stuff. But terms like that were not quite in the public lexicon, if you like.
Yeah.
It does kind of throw you into it. But it's a nice scene. But then we spend a lot of time in the Tron world,
Yeah.
if you like, and it is kind of like, it feels like what is, I was watching it, although I've seen this film 20 times, I was watching it this time for a review thinking, right, put myself into the mind of seeing it for the first time, and it is that thing where you think, yeah, they maybe should have taken their foot off the pedal in terms of that stuff, just to acclimatise viewers, and that might have helped it back in 1982.
Hey, what's been going on in the other sectors? I've been stuck here for 200 microcycles.
It's murder out there. You can't even travel around your own microcircuits without permission from Master Control Program. I mean, sending me down here to play games. Who does he calculate he is?
I think definitely. I think most of the issues with it is storytelling issues, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think it was way ahead of its time in many respects. And yeah, I struggled with it, but at the same time I loved it.
Yeah, I think that's fair,
Yeah, and I mean, that transition scene from the real world to the computer world is just stunning. And a lot of the Tron world, I mean, it's incredible. Nothing else looks like that, even to today.
No. I think, I think, it was it's known for its a lot of use of CGI, pure CGI at the time, but a lot of it is actually like animation.
Oh yeah.
And when we're seeing the actual human characters and stuff, a lot of that is backlit animation. There's lots of different layers.
Yeah, a lot of composite shots made out a lot of layers, like you said. And camera shots are static because that's the only way they could do it back then, and there's not much movement.
I wonder if that kind of maybe subconsciously doesn't help the film when you've got the human element and you do have that kind of locked off shots. I did notice a couple that they've obviously managed to be able to do it. I don't know if it was like a digital zoom or something that they did in it or something. I don't know. But there was a couple, but yeah, most of the time it does. I'm wondering if that subconsciously doesn't help with because it is a little slow, maybe. It's a bit, the pacing of it takes its time for sure.
This was supposed to be easy.
From a aesthetic point of view, I mean, it's mind-blowing, just each shot. I mean, the amount of effort that goes into each shot in that film.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing.
It's definitely one of those, I was watching like some of the behind-the-scenes stuff for this. I'd watched it before, but not for a while. Usually I kind of put Tron on every couple of years, and it's sort of like a Christmas film for me. I don't know, I think the visuals of it fused with like the Christmas tree that was in the living room that that afternoon. Later on, when the sequel was released, that was released in December as well. So it just kind of, I just kind of sealed it for me as a couple of Christmas movies. But going back to the original, yeah, it's amazing watching the behind the scenes stuff, how it was done. It's like, it's not, I don't know. I mean, I don't really watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff of modern day movies because I don't really feel very interested in seeing how it was made, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of people sitting at computers just kind of animate. I'm not saying it's not a worthy job and, obviously artistic, but...
Because I think the first film feels like it was made by the users, and where Tron Legacy is made by the users and the programs together.
All right, okay, yeah, that could be, that's a theory.
What kind of program is he?
He's not any kind of program, Sark. He's a user.
A user?
That's right. He pushed me in the real world. Somebody pushes me, I push back, so I brought him down here.
I don't think that a film should be judged on how much work was put into it and whatnot, but it definitely, it's impressive.
Yeah.
And yeah, visually it's not going to impress modern day viewers. I wouldn't have thought if they're discovering it.
I don't know. I think it should really. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
But it probably doesn't.
Maybe the sort of human element of it, but I think like when you've got the recognizers and the light cycles, I'm not sure that would kind of go well with a 12-year-old in 2022. No, I'm not sure.
That's true. Right enough.
But yeah, you can appreciate from our point of view, looking at it. And like you said, nothing else. I think it was such an expensive process with all the different layers they had to put down and photograph on top of each other, and all things that I don't understand. That was so expensive and so time consuming that I just think they never did it ever again. Yeah. So it's and I can't imagine that anyone ever would. So the only time you ever see anything like that is when you get a homage to Tron. There's been like South Park did an episode.
Okay.
And with Trey Parker and Matt Stone were fans. And I think The Simpsons has done it as well.
Homer, this is your physician, Dr. Julius Hibbert. Can you tell us what it's like in there?
It's like, did anyone see the movie Tron?
No.
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 Yes. I mean, no. No.
Yeah, because even if you don't know the film, you probably recognise the suits and but yeah, I think this film probably influenced a lot of other films. I mean, I was feeling a bit of Skynet, Terminator stuff going on, a bit of Matrix as well.
Yeah, the hero's journey. I don't think it quite sticks the landing or anything like that, but you can see what it's trying to do. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think watch more and more. It's there's a bit of an obvious Star Wars influence to it. I felt there's a sort of like visual graphic of what Tron needs to do to hit the Master Control program with his disc. You see the sort of like it's kind of similar to the Star Trek trench run when you see the computer simulation of it. So there's things like that, and I think Disney were kind of hoping it was going to be something in that kind of ballpark, to the point that they even took the name off of the originally in the posters, and originally even I think for the 20th DVD. It's not Disney that's on the box, if you like.
Okay.
I think they wanted to kind of like aim for a slightly older audience.
Yeah.
And not have them be put off by the Disney brand being for slightly younger, family friendly.
That's interesting. They were putting money behind these projects back then. These kind of experimental.
I think that's the thing I was thinking about this time. It's sort of like, I think maybe where Tron doesn't get it right is it's not quite an arty experimental sci-fi film like say THX or something like that. But then it's not quite the family friendly adventure into like something like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or something like that. It could have went either of those routes.
Yeah.
And it kind of, for me, it feels like it kind of goes somewhere down the middle and kind of wobbles quite a bit here and there. But ultimately, it's still hugely enjoyable for me. A little rough around the edges for sure. As I always said, I was really impressed by it, like when I was a kid. I think I saw it years later, possibly for the 20th anniversary DVD, and I was a little bit, okay, it's not quite as quite as good as I was remembering, like you're saying, sort of story-wise.
Okay. Sherman, set the Wayback Machine for 3 years ago. Kevin Flynn, one of Incom's brightest young software engineers. He's so bright, as a matter of fact, that he starts going in at night, sets up his own private memory file, and begins writing a program for a video game he's invented called Space Paranoids.
You invented Space Paranoids?
So Flynn, he's a programmer that works for Incom, and he gets fired. His programs are stolen from him.
Video games he's made stolen by Dillinger, who rises up in the company by doing that. Flynn's trying to get into the Master Control program to get the evidence for that, and that's kind of that's all he's doing, really. That's all, and it's maybe, I don't know if that's quite enough of a hero's journey or something. That it maybe feels a little kind of flat, and I kind of feel like I want him to learn something on the way, or grow in some way, or realise maybe there's bigger things that he needs to be thinking about, because from Tron's point of view, who's also our main character.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah,
kind of our main character as well. He's the kind of Luke Skywalker type. Flynn's more the Han Solo type.
so Flynn's a human being, and he's known as a user.
Yeah, he basically pushes the MCP in the real world by trying to hack into him. So there's an experimental laser also in NCOM.
And just happens to be pointing at him.
I'd like to go against you and see what you're made of.
You know, you don't look a thing like your pictures.
I'm warning you. You're entering a big error, Flynn. I'm gonna have to put you on the game grid.
Games? You want games? I'll give you games.
So it's all taking place inside this NCOM computer, which is maybe, I think that's maybe one of the things, I mean, I'm just going to list a heap of things that's like wrong with Tron while I'm also praising it up. But there's not a kind of much of a real world consequence. And there's no sort of ticking clock. And I think both those things could probably be quite easily remedied. There's a slight hint at it with the Master Control Program when it threatens it's going to hack the Pentagon and then the Kremlin because it's craving power and knowledge and control.
That's right. I think there could have been more of that.
Yes.
Because there wasn't enough tension in the film. There's no real kind of feeling of a villain there that's going to cause real danger.
In the real world, yeah. There is in the Tron world, we'll call it the Tron world, in the mainframe world, but ultimately when you take a step back from that, this is all happening in the mainframe computer of a technology company, so who cares? You know, at the end of the day, you unplug that and, well, what? There's no consequences to that, you know. Tron is just a program, effectively, within that, who's just to monitor communications or something between the Master Control Program and any outside kind of sources.
That's where I thought it was a bit like Skynet. If he could connect to the Pentagon and Kremlin, then he's got control. And
that could have, yeah, if you'd had that kind of like parallel, because at the start we've kind of like got parallel like between the Tron world and the real world. We're kind of going back and forth, but then we hit the half-hour mark and then we're purely in the Tron world. And that's when I think it could have benefited a bit from going back into the real world, seeing Alan, Dillinger, the Master Control Program in the real world. It's hacking into the Pentagon and it's trying to hack into the Kremlin. You've got that ticking clock, you've got the real world consequences.
Yeah.
And you maybe got Flynn kind of coming to realise, oh, there's more important things than my video games that I designed. As much as that, he's obviously got a point.
Yeah.
It kind of feels a little thin in terms of that this is his, his motivation.
No, I mean, I think that's just the issues with it. It was the story, really. I mean, they got so much right and it was so unique.
I think everything's there with the story. I think that's the frustrating thing is it's kind of, like I said, it's like, I'm saying there's no real world consequence, but it hints at it. It's just kind of muddled a bit or it's not kind of fleshed out enough, and that's the kind of frustrating thing.
Because it's not something that everyone can watch and get into. No. I think people are sending a lot of people to sleep, probably.
There's a 68.71% chance you're right.
Cute.
End of line.
Yeah, it's a 90-minute film, and I do have to agree that there gets to a point where I do start to zone out.
Right.
And I'm saying that as a fan, and I do. There is a bit when, I don't know, I think we get onto some of the stuff on the Solar Sailor, where they're going towards the Master Computer and all these kind of things. It gets a little slow and just slouchy, and there's maybe not a lot happening. But again, I kind of feel like I really hate Tron, but I don't, obviously.
Yeah.
I do still enjoy watching it, and all the more so now that there's a solid sequel that came out 28 years later.
He actually did it. I'm on the grid.
So this was your first time seeing this film?
It was my first time, yeah. So you must have been quite excited then to hear this film coming out back in 2010.
Yeah, well, I was there on opening night, I think. Ready to go, probably at least opening weekend to go and see it. I was really pumped. I'd got the hold of the soundtrack, by Daft Punk before that.
Oh yeah.
So I probably played that about 20 times.
They got a wee cameo in the film, don't they?
Yes, at the end of line club.
That's right, yeah.
So yeah, I was totally excited about this. Like I say, I'm a Daft Punk fan, and not just the first two albums, even the third and fourth that people don't like.
Okay.
I'm still there for them, but this soundtrack was really incredible.
Had a sort of Blade Runner feel to it at times, I thought.
Yeah, very high synth driven. A lot of orchestration as well. So it's not pure. It doesn't feel like a pure sort of Daft Punk album. So yeah, I was really excited. I'd kind of like that was in my head, go to see it. So I think it helps the film no end compared to the first film, which I think the soundtrack's a bit forgettable.
Yeah, I mean I can't remember, but I remember the soundtrack to Tron Legacy. It was nice.
So it's a huge markup for that. It definitely helps it. And yeah, I mean in 2010 I liked Tron Legacy. I've watched it quite a lot since then, and I think I'm close to loving it now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean I liked it enough in 2010, but I think I maybe didn't appreciate it as much as I should have.
Yeah, I can see. There's a lot more story put into the overall story, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a film. Maybe you see different things in it the more you watch it. I get the feeling it might be that. I've only seen it the once.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of things that I thought, I maybe missed.
Well, yeah, possibly that. I think what more recent viewings of it, I really like the father-son aspect of it. Maybe that's I wasn't a father at the time, and I am now, so that might be part of it. And I think it feels, it's not 100% perfect or anything like that, but it's for me it feels pretty good story, and it takes it on a turn because you don't quite know where it's going with that kind of stuff, and so it kept it kind of fresh for me, and I like that. I like that element of it, and Jeff Bridges gets a good kind of character arc in it, which as we've said, he didn't really get in the first one.
Sam, long time. You have no idea. You're here. You're here.
Again, I appreciate it at the time, but I think looking back on it now, I think it still looks like amazing to me. 10, 12 years later, I think it's got a really strong visual look that's consistent throughout the whole thing. And I think it gets a lot of the story things right. Like I said, we get the sort of like build up in the real world. So we're following effectively Flynn has gone missing. Well, I suppose we should start right at the start.
Yeah. So Flynn's got a 10-year-old, roughly, or no, it wouldn't be quite 10, would it?
Get in there.
Yeah. And his name is
Sam.
Sam, yeah. And they're having a chat, and we see a de-aged Jeff Bridges.
Yeah. I mean, I was saying like the visual effects are amazing, but that might be the one caveat where it's not quite held. Yeah. Well, I'll say it's not held up, but I remember it not particularly impressing at the time.
Yeah, there were some shots that were quite arty with the lighting, and it looked effective. But then when he turns to camera, fully lit, it's like, oh, okay, it's not quite.
Yeah, they're not quite
working.
There yet. This is 2010, so I suppose it was quite. I don't know if it was. There wasn't a lot of this sort of stuff at the time. It's a lot more common now, I suppose. A lot of the Marvel films and Star Wars have done it, but there wasn't a lot. Maybe there was. I remember Patrick Stewart in one of the X-Men films. They did it with him. Didn't look particularly good there either, if I remember right. So yeah, it is. And it's not just that scene. He becomes, well, not him, but his alter ego in the grid. We can call it the grid now.
Yeah. See, you kind of get away with it in the grid, but in the real world, it doesn't work so well because it doesn't look real.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. But I think that even he's not supposed to look like an avatar in the grid. He is supposed to look like
a human.
Yeah, because everyone else does. So it is a bit, and he becomes our main antagonist basically, which is a stronger antagonist, I think, this time. And it is interesting having, I like that stuff about how you can understand why Clue is doing what he's doing, because often villains are just like, you know, I'm the bad guy and I want to do the bad things and stuff like that, you know, and take over and whatnot. But that's not what Clue's doing, so he's a little more interesting.
Yeah, so basically Clue was created by Jeff Bridges' character.
Kevin
Flynn.
Yeah.
To run things. To create a world.
To create the perfect system in the grid. And what happens is these, it's not really explained that well, but they're sort of like semi-organic life forms or something that evolve in the grid of their own volition, I guess.
This is what Flynn refers to as a miracle or something, isn't it?
Yes, he starts with a miracle at the start. He tells his son Sam about it before he disappears.
Yeah. And these beings are called isos?
Isos, yeah.
What does isos mean?
Isomorphic life forms or something like that. I don't know if it really means anything or if it means nothing.
ISOs, isomorphic algorithms. A whole new life form.
You created them?
No. They manifested like a flame. They weren't really from anywhere. The conditions were right and they came into being.
Also, you get this, we see some kind of newsreel footage of Kevin Flynn. You kind of portray him as he's kind of going a bit Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah, there's a nice parallel with a scene where we see him kind of addressing a big crowd.
Yeah.
And he comes across as quite egotistical and bordering on a little bit, maybe not evil, but getting there. And then that's kind of like nicely mirrored with Clue, who basically says something similar later on to his army, who are about to, you know, invade our world.
Okay, yeah.
So it's a nice kind of parallel there.
Yeah. So Sam, isn't it?
Sam, yeah.
Yeah. So Sam Flynn has arrived in the grid. Mm-hmm. He thinks he meets his father.
Well, he arrives in the grid. He gets picked up to do the games, which is a really good sequence, I thought, and it's really pacey at this point. It follows a similar path to the first film, I guess, when his father, Kevin Flynn, does a similar thing. He's transported in. He's immediately kind of rounded up and put into the games, but obviously this is a much more extravagant and lush and much more exciting, I would say. At that point, we're about 40 minutes in, and it's like, for me, the film's not missed a beat. You know, at this point, I'm just like loving every minute of it. But yeah, so he immediately goes back into the games against Clue, but is rescued by Cora, played by Olivia Wilde. So she's the last surviving ISO who's living with Kevin Flynn, which is not a bad life, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Sam, I was really trying to get back home all this time. I was really trying. But yeah, so he properly meets his father now, Kevin Flynn, played by Jeff Bridges, who's definitely Jeff Bridges in this film. I think it would be fair to say channeling quite a bit of the dude.
Science, philosophy, every idea man has ever had about the universe up for grabs. Biodigital jazz, man.
Oh yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't actually, I meant to check, but I'm sure there's got to be some sort of fan theories that The Big Lebowski is actually a Tron sequel.
That would be cool.
Yeah, Kevin didn't quite go missing in the grid yet. He just took some time off from NCOM.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is maybe where the film starts to kind of just slightly kind of sag a little bit for me at this point. It just does that thing where we've got a lot of information to kind of impart back and forth, so they do that by just sitting at a table and having a discussion.
Yeah.
And I just think there's an opportunity there to do something a bit more interesting, maybe.
I agree, yeah. It's kind of started to get a bit dull there, I thought.
I thought maybe even if they did something while they were fixing Flynn's motorcycle, which becomes a plot point, bonding, but also learning about each other and imparting part of the plot and stuff, something like that. But we quickly, I think, get back into it with when we go to the End of Line Club and we meet Michael Sheen's character.
The son of Flynn. Of all the innumerable possibilities, he has to walk into mine. Libations for everybody! Lancaster!
Yeah, a good kind of battle and arrival of Flynn Senior at this point, who has to come into the real world to sort out his kids' mistakes. So I like that kind of stuff when he's just trying to keep himself out of it, but his kid arrives and just mucks everything up immediately, and he's got to go into dad mode, and he's just like very dude-esque, and he's like going on about his zen and stuff.
Sam, you're messing with my zen thing, man.
You understand why he's taking himself out of the situation, but then you understand why he has to go back into it, and it's purely because of his son, effectively, and I think that's why it works for me.
Yeah, because it's his son's, it's the only reason for him to go back, isn't it? Or attempt to go back.
Yeah, and also obviously the son Sam gets into problems immediately in the grid because he's hot-headed and he's not listening to his dad's advice. So you get all that kind of father-son stuff going on, which feels real, feels relatable, even whether you're a dad or not. And we get a nice battle scene where Jeff Bridges arrives in feels very religious kind of transcendental experience for the programs there. I think you see one of them kind of praying, because I guess we maybe not explored this, we've not talked about this, but there's a sort of religious allegory throughout Tron.
Yeah, loosely kind of biblical kind of feel about it.
Yeah. It's not explored too deeply.
No.
It's more basically like the users, there's programs who believe the users exist and those that don't. So that's an obvious religious kind of analogy.
And he created Clue in his own image.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
And Clue kind of goes a bit crazy and
rebels. Well, not even rebels. I guess, as was said, you understand why Clue, he's been asked, this is what I want you to do. He's a program. So he's like ones and zeros, so he's going to do it.
Yeah.
He's going to just, so I like that element. And again, it gives you that sort of understanding of the antagonist,
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
At this point, because Sam's messed everything up, Jeff Bridges is like, right, well, we might as well just try and get to this portal opening that's just shutting down, which means we can get out into the real world. Clue's also got the same idea. He needs Flynn's disc to get there, so we kind of like congregate at this portal.
Yeah, so if Clue gets into the real world, what happens?
The only thing that Flynn says is like the guy doesn't, he doesn't dig imperfection, so he's got to have some time with the real world.
Would he not be just like a human though? Would he be?
Yeah, this is where the lore's not. It's not exactly explained, but I guess he would become human when he goes through. I don't know. Don't ask too many.
You just get locked up pretty quickly.
Let's move.
But we get a kind of nice showdown, I think, between our two Jeff Bridges and Jeff Bridges fighting on a bridge. You notice that?
Oh, of course, yes. Seen this before, have we?
Yeah. But it's a nice kind of like a moment where they have a chat, and Flynn is like, yeah, you haven't done anything wrong. It was my mistake, and it's a sort of like he's basically talking to a younger version of himself.
Yeah.
And it's another sort of like a little bit like the son thing he has with Sam. He can't really. They're at such different kind of planes in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of interesting. You could imagine that yourself, like having a conversation with yourself from 30 years ago and how different you would be,
yeah,
and how you thought then
Yeah.
You know, maybe a bit more idealistic or whatnot. Yeah, I like that moment. And then, but obviously, we need to have a fight. So I think Clue just kicks him in the nuts. And, you know, I liked all that stuff, the nice father and son moment, sacrificing himself for his son. That all kind of worked for me. And, you know, made it, I think, on paper, overall, a better film than the original, because it's just got that emotional sort of tie-off, and it's a little more, it's much more kind of satisfying.
Better defined protagonist. And
But yeah, and even the antagonist and the story and what's at stake.
Yeah.
There is real world stakes, there's a ticking clock. We've got all that kind of stuff that was missing from the first one.
Very true.
They do a proper sequel. It's not like a reboot or a remake or anything like that. It's a proper sequel.
Yeah.
But they also go as much as they can to sort of like acclimatise newcomers to the story. I think they did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah.
It did okay at the box office, I think, but it didn't set the things on fire or anything like that. So
still possibly a hard sell.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm kind of like, I didn't realise until we were reviewing this that like it's not got a greatest like Rotten Tomatoes score or anything like that. It feels like it's in the I think it's in the 50% or something like that.
Okay.
I think that's pretty criminal, like. But I think that's harsh. I don't know. Maybe you don't. But for me, it feels harsh. And I mean, they're still talking about a third film, but yeah, I'd like to see a third one.
Yeah, I think eventually, definitely.
I think that'll happen. Yeah.
I don't see why not, but sometimes you've got to give these things time. I like the first film, obviously it was like, how long? Nearly 30 years?
28 years between, and now we've been 12 years already between these ones. So yeah, it definitely, maybe that's just the way that Tron will be. And then if there's no more Tron, I'm fine with that. You know, I've got these two films, and yeah, I'm good with that. If there's a third one announced, I'll be there for it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks for introducing me to Tron properly, I guess.
Wouldn't that be something?
So what would give our patented logs on the fire Woodshed reviews ratings?
Yeah, gosh.
So we'll start with the first one, 1982's Tron. Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 3. I think possibly it's maybe a 2.5. But I think with what it means to me and how inspirational it was at the time, and that, yeah, it's quite rough around the edges for sure. Yeah. But there's a charm to it. It still holds that sort of like that kind of wonder for me. Just kind of going into this world. You're in it for, it feels like quite a long time, even though it's only an hour and a half. Yeah. But you know, I like it. You can go and make a cup of tea, come back, and you've not missed anything. Yeah, it's not by any means. I think 2.5. I would maybe say realistically, but I'm going to give it a 3. You know, just to kind of bump it up. I think just for what it did, for what it achieved, and yeah, it got a lot of things wrong, but I can forgive it. I can forgive it for that.
Yeah, no, I think you're actually absolutely right, because I was swithering between 2.5 and 3 myself.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll give it a 3 as well.
All right, there you go. And Tron Legacy, I'll let you go first with this one.
Ah, gosh. I would give it a 3 as well, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, it's a lot more slick and all these things.
Sure.
Yeah, better story. But yeah, it's just still a bit slow in parts.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't communicate things as well as it should have, possibly.
Okay.
But yeah, I would go for 3.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough. I'm going to go for an overall for a 4. At times, it's an all singing, all dancing 5. Other times it dips a little bit, not massively, probably just a 3, something like that. It gets a few things wrong. I think we didn't kind of cover, but Tron is completely overlooked and not very well developed in the film as a bad guy turned back to a good guy. That's an issue. Yeah, there's little dips in the sort of as it's kind of going along. It's maybe a little tiny bit too long. It's about 2 hours 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
A little trimming would not have hurt. But I'm not entirely sure what you would trim, but you know, if they could have. But yeah, I think overall, as it's going to go ups and downs, I would give it a very solid 4.
Yeah, I can see myself revisiting it in the future, and maybe I'll get more from it.
I think you probably will. I think you probably will. 'Cause I certainly did anyway, from subsequent viewings, and I think it each film kind of like just plays off nicely with the other one, sort of thing, you know. It gives me more of an impetus to watch the original, because then I've got the other one as well, and it's sort of like, you know, there's good and bad in both, and it's like just a nice different kind of film experience.
Pick me up in an hour. Thanks. Woo! Greetings program.
Okay, well I think that's us for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time.
End of line.